How a toy. U.S. backpack radio shocked German signal experts. The hidden FM trick that made battlefield coordination 10 times faster. January the 27th, 1944, 8:30 hours, somewhere near Nettuno, Italy. Anzio beachhead perimeter. A cold, metallic wind pushes off the Tyrrhenian Sea. It carries two smells that never fully leave a beachhead: wet sin and burnt cordet. In a canvas tent lit by a single hooded lamp, a German signals officer flips through a fresh intelligence bulletin. The paper is crisp. The tone is confident. He taps the page with a pencil like it's a verdict. German two-way radio telephones, it reads. The German Feldfunksprecher B is their so-called walkie-talkie. The practical range is about 1 mile. And then, the key line. The one that sounds like a comforting law of physics. The distance is theoretically about 1/4 the distance over which the American sets can operate. Source: 1/4. That number feels safe. Because it matches what German engineers believe about radio warfare in 1944. Portable radios are weak, noisy, short-legged, and easy to disrupt. Field wires, reliable. Runners, slow, but dependable. Radios, useful if you can tolerate the hiss, the static, the chaos. And the Germans have a logical reason for dismissing the American walking radios as hype. American armies are loud. Their front is sprawling. Their supply lines stretch like veins across Italy and France. In German minds, that kind of chaos needs rigid, wired control, not little talking boxes. The officer folds the bulletin, satisfied. Outside, a shell lands somewhere down the line, and the ground shivers like a struck drum. He has no idea that 300 yards away, an American radioman is about to do something that makes this German assumption crack at the center. Not with a new weapon. Not with a bigger army. With a 38-pound backpack and a signal so clean, it sounds like it was spoken in a quiet office. What he didn't know was, the Americans weren't winning with better radios. They were winning with a different kind of radio. What the German expert didn't know was, the underdog isn't a general. It isn't a famous ace. It's a piece of gear most soldiers hate at first sight. A backpack radio, FM, built for infantry. A hard, squared case that bruises ribs and eats shoulder skin. The straps bite through wool. The metal feels like ice at dawn, and like a stove by noon. It's the kind of burden that makes a man whisper a prayer when he hears, "You're the radio man." And on paper, it doesn't look like a miracle. It's heavy. It needs warm-up time. It runs on batteries that can turn into dead weight if supply fails. Source: in Italy, the mud is thick, sticky, black, sour, like rotting leaves. It clings to boots. It swallows cables. It turns every step into a fight. And in the old world of war, commanders want field telephones, because wire feels certain, until it isn't. A wire laid across the ground gets cut by boots, tires, tank treads, and blast fragments. Every break means silence. Every silence means delay. Source: so the U.S. Signal Corps pushes radios forward. Not the little handheld one. That's the SCR-536, the handy talkie, a short-range AM set, about a mile in decent conditions. Source: the big bet is the SCR-300. And the men carrying it? They're not glamorous. They're often teenagers with calluses from factory work. Or farm boys who learned electricity by fixing fences and tractor ignitions. They smell like sweat, gun oil, and damp canvas. The SCR-300 radio man's world is mostly listening. Listening to static. Listening for a voice that might mean advance or might mean you're about to get hit. And when bullets start, He hits the dirt with 35 to 38 pounds, slamming his spine. One account from Italy is painfully vivid. A radioman realizes the radio's antenna is what draws fire, because he keeps it vertical for reception. He remembers thinking, basically, I'm not getting shot at because I'm brave. I'm getting shot at because I'm an antenna. Source. He turns to his officer. Short, bitter humor, the kind that keeps you sane. I don't want to carry the radio anymore. I was tired of getting shot at. Source. And the officer, probably half smiling because, what else do you do? Keep it up. We need you. Because the radio man isn't just carrying equipment, he's carrying time. Time to call for help. Time to warn. Time to coordinate. And in 1944, time is the rarest resource on a battlefield. The Germans assume the Americans are still trapped in the old rhythm. Runners, wires, delays. But the radio man's world is about to prove something else. American chaos isn't the weakness. It's the camouflage. It's what it is. Most armies in 1944 still live in an AM world. AM is usable. AM is common. AM also loves noise. Engines. Electrical systems. Weather. Battlefield interference. FM is different. FM doesn't care about the crackle the same way. It pushes through ignition noise and battlefield clutter with a clarity that feels almost insulting. And that wasn't an accident. This wasn't just American industry. This came from a controversial idea. Frequency modulation, pioneered by Edwin Howard Armstrong, demonstrated as a drastic reduction of noise and static as early as 1935. Source. Here's one of the I didn't know that moments. Armstrong wasn't just an inventor on paper. He was connected to the military transformation. The Army Peace notes he frequently visited Signal Corps labs and even served in an advisory capacity. Source. Now, the dramatic irony. The Germans expected Americans to build what everyone built, AM sets. But the Americans, pushed by Signal Corps decisions, went FM. Even inside the US system, it wasn't automatic. The Signal Corps had to make a hard call, switch future radios to FM. And it mattered because AM sets in vehicles suffered badly from engine vibration and ignition interference. Source. Now, let's get technical, because numbers make this real. The SCR-300 was designed to operate in 40.0 to 48.0 MHz. Source. It was divided into 41 channels. Source. It was specified for an operational distance of 3 miles and could do more under good conditions. Source. And the weight? With the BA-70 battery, the complete installation is 38.23 pounds. Source. That number matters because it tells you what kind of miracle this is. It's not light. It's not elegant. It's a blunt instrument of coordination. Now, the overlooked part, the thing German engineers miss at first glance. The SCR-300 wasn't just portable FM. It was designed for soldier-proof operation. Single tuning control and automatic frequency control to keep stations matched without delicate precision tuning. Source. That means something specific on a battlefield. A nervous private with shaking hands can still make it work. And now, the micro-stories. The "this is where it shows" moments. Micro-story number 1. The wire breaks. A forward unit moves. A field telephone line gets shredded. Boots, wheels, shell fragments. A runner would take minutes to find command. Minutes under fire can be a lifetime. The SCR-300 doesn't care about broken wire. It cares about line of sight and battery. And that's it. Micro-story number 2. The Germans use signals. In late war conditions, the Germans often rely on visual signals more than the Americans. Colored lights, pyrotechnics. Source. Visual signals are fast. they're also visible. An FM net is invisible. You don't need flares. You don't need lights. You don't need a man standing up waving anything. Micro-story number 3. The German walkie-talkie isn't the same fight. The Feldfunk Sprecher B is described as a compact portable set with a practical range about 1 mile, line of sight best, and about 13 hours of operation with a fresh battery. Source. But even the U.S. Bulletin admits something devastating between the lines. The distance is theoretically about 1/4 the distance over which the American set can operate. Source. 1/4. That is the crack in the wall. Because it means the Americans aren't just talking more, they are connecting deeper. Company to battalion, infantry to armor. Forward observers calling corrections faster. And the Germans expected X. They expected Americans to be as blind and delayed as everyone else once wire is cut. But the Americans did Y. They turned the battlefield into a moving conversation. And now the tension, this shouldn't last. Because if it's really that effective, the Germans will do what Germans do. They will study it. They will counter it. They will jam it. They will copy it. Or they'll capture one. And then the laughing stops. Early January 1945, Western Front. The Ardennes aftermath. Snow packs into every seam of cloth. The cold turns metal into something that burns skin on contact. Breath comes out white and sharp, like steam from a kettle. This is where German confidence usually thrives. Winter, suffering, endurance. But something is wrong. American units are moving with a coordination that doesn't fit the terrain. German officers expect breakdowns. Units separated by forest and fog, commanders blind, orders delayed. Instead, American formations keep reacting. Not instantly, war is never instant, but fast enough to feel unnatural. And then we cut to the German perspective that matters. Not the frontline infantryman, the signal people. Because signal troops understand a brutal truth. You can survive bad tactics longer than you can survive lost communication. The German view in the last offensive is blunt. Here, the Americans held advantages with the handy-talkie and with FM. One of the communication standbys of the war was the SCR-300, an FM set of commendable performance. Our source. Now imagine what that sounds like in a German signals tent. Imagine the realization. They're using FM at company and battalion levels. We're still mostly AM in this layer. Source. And the German sets? German sets, all of which were AM, were subject to interference by the sheer volume of their own and Allied traffic. Source. So here's the before versus after contrast. Tight and visual. Before, German doctrine expects Americans to lose control when wire is cut and units scatter. After, Americans keep talking, company to battalion, through snow and confusion, with FM clarity and short, sharp transmissions. Now, the exact promised moment. The title payoff, shown as a scene. A captured SCR-300 is carried into a German signals workshop. The German technicians don't treat it like a wonder weapon. At first, it's just another box. Heavy. Ugly. American. They open it. They see the complexity, vacuum tubes, seals, the rugged casing. Someone smirks. Then they power it. They listen. And the sound coming through is not what they expect. Not that familiar battlefield hiss. Not that ragged AM fade. A voice lands in the headphones like it's sitting in the room. That is the moment the laugh catches in the throat. Because the Germans didn't just encounter a good radio. They encountered the system that made the radio usable in chaos. FM, clarity, reduced noise, source. Portable battlefield net at company/battalion source. soldier-proof tuning logic, and automatic frequency control source. Frequency coverage, 40 to 48 megahertz source. 41 channels source. Weight, 38.23 pounds, with BA-70 source. Now we escalate with incident logic. Every time a German unit tries to disrupt command by severing lines, the Americans shift to radio. Every time the Germans expect the Americans to slow down, the Americans keep coordinating. And now, the German experts' internal thought becomes the real turning point. If the enemy can coordinate faster at the tactical level, then your local superiority collapses faster. You can win a firefight and still lose the moment, because they'll pull artillery, armor, or reserves into position before you can exploit the opening. That's not a radio advantage. That's a time advantage. And time, on a battlefield, is lethal. The SCR-300 doesn't win the war by itself. It wins something more specific: the ability to act like a single organism while spread out. And that changes outcomes in ways that don't show up on a single casualty list, but show up in operational tempo. The U.S. advantage is described plainly in the last offensive. Americans had tactical advantages with the handy-talkie and with FM source. The SCR-300 is called one of the communication standbys of the war, used primarily at company and battalion. Source. Now bring in the production reality, because scale is what turns a good idea into dominance. Motorola, Galvin Manufacturing, produced more than 45,000 units before the war ended in 1945. Source. That's the part most people miss. This wasn't a prototype advantage. This wasn't special forces only. This was mass. Now, the German side testimony is embedded in the intelligence framing. They had their own walkie-talkie concept, the Feldfunksprecher B, but its practical range and operational reality isn't the same battlefield reach. Source. And the U.S. official tone drives it home. American sets operate farther, enough that German sets are theoretically about 1/4 the reach. Source. Long-term implications. This isn't just World War II trivia. This is a turning point in how modern armies fight. Not just weapons and armor, not just bravery and doctrine, but communications as a weapon system. And here's another "I didn't know that" moment that reframes the entire thing. In that Army history piece, Armstrong's letter to Colton talks about the scale of demands, systems of 100 separate channels, and the struggle over crystal shortages and rugged field construction. Source. That line reveals the hidden war behind the war. A war to manufacture stability, channels, and reliability at scale. The Germans didn't miss FM. They missed the industrial and organizational decision to make FM the standard direction. And now the question gets answered. What did this really mean? It meant the Americans could coordinate dispersed units faster, more reliably, with less dependence on fragile infrastructure. It meant that cutting a wire didn't automatically cut command. It meant that battlefield tempo, who reacts first, tilted. And the Germans felt it. After the war, the SCR-300 doesn't vanish overnight. It lingers because good systems always do. The legacy is not nostalgia. The legacy is doctrine. The SCR-300 story becomes part of why modern armies obsess over frequency management, channel discipline, ruggedization, operator simplicity, resistance to interference, and above all, speed of coordination. Now, we snap back to where we started. January 27, 1944. That German bulletin confidently describing the German so-called walkie-talkie and implying the Americans aren't far ahead. Source. It was logical. It was well written. It was wrong, in the way that matters most in war. It measured radios like gadgets. The Americans treated radios like muscles, not a tool you carry, a system your army moves with. Final reflection, short, sharp, and a little cocky because the truth earns it. The Germans didn't lose because they lacked courage. They didn't lose because they lacked engineering. They lost 1,000 moments because the Americans could stitch those moments together faster. And the last image that lingers, a radio man, soaked, exhausted, fingers numb, hugging the ground under fire. And still, through the roar, he hears a voice in his headset, clean and calm, like it's coming from another world. Not a miracle, just FM. Multimedia sources you can use, from the research above. A wartime technical illustration of the SCR-300 in use appears in the Warfare History Network article, Embedded Image, Source. A photo/diagram of the German Feldfunk Sprecher B appears in the Lone Sentry publication, Source. Sources, key. TM11-242, SCR-300- a technical manual entry. Source. TM11-242 PDF. Weight 38.23 pounds with BA-70. Source. U.S. Army article on FM transforming Army communications. Armstrong, Fort Monmouth context. Source. Motorola history page. SCR-300, production 1943-45, more than 45,000 units. Source. German two-way radio telephones intelligence write-up. Feldfunk Sprecher B specs, 1/4 the distance. Source. Hyperwar, The Last Offensive, FM plus SCR, 300 advantage of paragraph. Source. Warfare History Network, CR-300 story, Human Microstories plus numbers. Source. CR300.org, Development Narrative O'Connell Contract Quote. Source.